Melanie McGuire. Is she a heartless killer, or is she just the innocent wife they wrongfully convicted? Well, somebody killed her husband, chopped him up, and sent suitcases filled with his body parts sailing across the ocean. Let's see who it was. Hey, it's Genevia and welcome to Mystery Digest, where every Sunday I cover true crime cases, paranormal cases, and other mystery-related content. Welcome back to another episode. We're doing a true crime episode. Today we're talking about a case that's currently being debated on whether or not they have the right person behind bars. So, if you're new here, hello, sweetie. If you're a returning resident, thank you for coming back. Thank you. Make sure to like this video, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Today, I present to you the case of Melanie McGuire, the supposed suitcase killer. A nurse currently serving a life sentence for the murder of her husband. So we're going to look into the details of the murder, the events that led up to her husband's disappearance, and the details as to why people think maybe she's not the killer. On May 5th, 2004, two men decided to draw their kids from school for a fishing trip out on the Chesapeake Bay. Settling on a spot further from the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, over in Fisherman Island waters, they started saddling up and setting up their equipment. However, one of the kids saw something bobbing away in the water and wanted to see what it was. So the dad brought the boat closer. It was one part of a 3-piece dark green Kenneth Cole suitcase. Excited and feeling like they've found treasure, the kids got their dads to pull the suitcase over into the boat. Figuring it was just a lost piece of luggage that fell off a vehicle on its way through the tunnel, they didn't see a problem with it. But after bringing the piece of luggage on board, the dads kind of felt off about it. But before they got a chance to give it a second thought, the kids have already opened it and revealed something wrapped in a black plastic bag that started a murder investigation. In the suitcase were feet severed at the knees. It was noticed by the police that the feet weren't badly decomposed. In fact, it was fairly fresh, so it was safe to assume that it was dumped just a few hours prior. 6 days later, on May 11th, a uni student was on Fisherman's Island and saw a washed-up dark green suitcase. Curious, she made her way over to it, opened it, pulling away a bit of black plastic bag, and was hit with the rancid smell of human decay. She immediately contacted the necessary authorities, who then called the police. And of course, the police were expecting the call. Since they got body parts in the suitcase, they were waiting to find the rest of the body. The suitcase contained a torso with arms still attached, as well as a head which was wrapped in a medical-grade blanket. Then on May 16th, the third suitcase was found by a fisherman, and this find completed the body of their John Doe. The suitcase contained his pelvic area down to his knees and was badly decomposed. They did a composite sketch which was showed to the public through the news, and his best friend's wife recognized him. She came in to give a positive ID. Now with a name and approximate age, they found him in the database by running his fingerprints. And because he had a felony for reckless driving, they knew for sure that it was him. The body was identified as 39-year-old Bill McGuire, a computer programmer from the New Jersey Institute of Technology. He lived more than 300 miles away in Woodbridge, New Jersey. The medical examiner determined that the body was shot multiple times. A month later, his wife, the infamous Melanie McGuire, or the Suitcase Killer, a fertility nurse and the mother of his 2 children, was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Now, who are Bill and Melanie McGuire, and what was their marriage like? Well, Bill was a very charismatic man with a wild sense of humor that probably pissed off just as much people as he made laugh. He was described as being very loyal, caring, and kind, especially when he needed to be. He definitely was the type of person to leave a long-lasting impression on someone. And he had a few loyal and long-term friendships, which was the reason why his body was discovered so quickly. And Melanie? Well, Melanie was a very beautiful fertility nurse. She grew up getting straight A's, never got in trouble, and was all around a good kid. She was also very kind, compassionate, and caring, and was really easy to get along with. Her and Bill's personality came together seamlessly. But of course, things weren't as perfect as they might have seemed. Soon after getting married and having their first child, it's said that Bill's behavior changed drastically. According to a friend of Melanie, he had a dual personality. He could be sweet and caring, but the next minute he would be incredibly calculating and manipulative. The marriage was riddled with problems, from his gambling problems to infidelity. Melanie would end up at the butt end of his frustrations, and it wasn't uncommon for him to start arguments and then leave for a few days and not make any contact. Now, during this time, Melanie was having an affair with a doctor at the fertility clinic that she worked, a guy named Brad Miller. Brad Miller was a caring, charming, and thoughtful doctor that worked with Melanie. They were both married, but would often engage in banter that turned sexual around the 38-week mark of her second pregnancy with her husband. And this was just before she went off to maternity leave. When she got back from maternity leave, it became a full-blown affair. And even though Brad Miller had no intention of leaving his wife anytime soon, he and Melanie would often talk about getting married and living together. So Bill had his heart set on buying a Virginia Beach home, but Melanie wasn't having it. She wasn't with the idea for some reason. And you'll get my confusion soon enough. They ended up settling on a $500,000 New Jersey home. And they didn't even get to live in it? Ghetto! You better give me that money. So the day they settled on the house, they went back home to celebrate. And after Bill fell asleep that night, Melanie made a phone call to her lover. She told him that they settled on the house and that she was going to talk to Bill and sort things out. Why are you going to sort things out after you settled on a $500,000 home, sis? Not my marriage, not my problem. And here's where the story goes downhill. So according to Melanie, about 2 or 3 in the morning, Bill woke up and she decided that, hey, she's gonna talk to him. Now, understandably, he got pissed off. He was livid. They just settled on a $500,000 home. His wife's having an affair. She wants a divorce. Nothing is coming together at this point. Nothing is going smoothly. So they started arguing, and she said the argument became physical when he saw a dryer sheet hanging outside the sleeve of one of the kids' jackets in the laundry. So according to Melanie, he despised laundry sheets and, used it as a means to say, well, she's a bad mother and she's kind of worthless and blah, 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 because he think he was lazy to use a dryer sheet. So, again, according to Melanie, no one else is there that could tell the story. He's dead. The kids were too young. No one else but Melanie has a say on what went down this night. So, according to Melanie, Bill slammed her against the wall and proceeded to shove the dryer sheet down her throat. Then hit her across the face, open palm. And I quote, because if he used his fist, he probably would have broke my jaw. Now at this point, Melanie said she grabbed the baby and she went into the bathroom and she locked the door. He couldn't get in, obviously it's locked from the inside. And she said she heard him coming up and down the stairs, cussing her out, and she thinks he was packing suitcases. Some of the last words, according to Melanie, that he said was that she could tell her kids why they didn't have a dad, and her telling him to stop. He left the house and no one heard from him since that night. During the first couple of weeks he was missing. She didn't report him missing. She was looking about the divorce papers and she filed a restraining order. So now that we know the events that went down shortly before he went missing, let's look at the evidence for and against her being arrested and convicted of the murder. Being that Melanie is his wife, she's obviously the first one the police is going to go to and see, well, let's see if we can clear this girl off the crime. Because the crime suspected to happen in New Jersey, even though the body was found in Virginia, police in Jersey took over the case. So let's look at some stuff. Why didn't she report him missing? Of course, according to Melanie, he did this pretty often. He'd get angry, he'd disappear for days, yada yada yada, bag of chips. But he disappeared for a couple weeks. It wasn't just a couple days. And Melanie's response to this pretty much was her pride wouldn't allow it. During the investigation, when the investigators were trying to find any piece of clues, any evidence as to where he could have gone, she said that he normally goes to Atlantic City whenever he goes on his gambling sprees. And lo and behold, that's where they found his car. Now, after his car was found, they also found surveillance footage of someone moving his vehicle. And it's when Melanie found out about this, is when she told him that she's actually the one that moved his car. But she later confessed that the reason why she did move his car is because they normally do that as a way to mess with each other. Like they'd get angry, fight, and they'd move each other's vehicles. It sounds really fantastical, but that's what she said. Also, the surveillance footage that they found was too blurry to tell who was the one that moved his car. So if Melanie didn't tell them, they probably wouldn't have known who it was. She dug her own grave. Stop talking. There was also an easy bail pass of 90 cents for when she used the toll in Delaware 2 days after the murder. And not only that, she tried to get rid of the charges. When asked why she did this, she told the investigators that she knew what people would have thought if they saw it. It was pretty incriminating, so she decided that she was going to try and get it off, but of course that didn't work. The investigation sought to find out if she's ever owned a gun. They checked in New Jersey, but found nothing. But then it clicked that Pennsylvania had a lot less stricter gun laws, and it was relatively close. So they checked there instead, and that's where they found that she bought a .38 caliber handgun that used unusual bullets called woodcutter bullets, and likewise the bullets that killed her husband were woodcutter bullets. Now her defense for this was that the gun actually wasn't for her, it was for Bill. He couldn't buy a gun because he had a felony against his name. It was for reckless driving, so he couldn't get it himself, and he actually pressed her to go get it for him for a good while before she decided to buy it. Also, during the trial, no one plugged the serial number of a gun into the website to see if the specifications matched those of the gun used by the killer. Also, the black plastic bags that were in the suitcase where the body was placed in matched those that were found in her house. It's actually a part of a collection with different sizes, and the sizes that were used to hold the body were actually missing from the ones that she had in her home. Now, that in itself doesn't prove anything, because lots of people have black plastic bags in their home, and they could all be the same brand if they're from a specific area. Another thing was the medical grade blanket that was found wrapped around the victim's head. Those would be available to her because she's a nurse, and the fertility clinic that she worked at actually had those in stock. So that's not looking too well for Miss Girl. That's really not looking too wonderful for her. But then again, medical grade blankets, she might have had access to them, but it doesn't really prove that it's from her. The suitcases that the body parts were found in actually belonged to the couple, which again in itself doesn't prove much because according to Melanie, he left with suitcases. So in the case that she isn't the killer, the actual killer could have used those same suitcases and put his body in it. Incriminating searches were found in their home computer. They included searches like how to purchase guns illegally, how to commit murder, and undetectable poisons, and generally how to sedate and kill someone. Even though this is very incriminating, there is nothing that proves that those searches were from her specifically. And this is me pretty much paraphrasing what Melanie said. she doesn't have to search the internet to find information like that. She has colleagues, she has books that could easily give her the information that she would need for something like that wouldn't leave internet search histories. So in all, the police believe that she drugged her husband, shot him, dismembered his body, then disposed of his body parts in the suitcases. Now, during the investigation, her defense stuck to the angle of the lack of evidence besides circumstantial evidence, that she was the only suspect that they really drilled like that. Now, her lover, Brad, was actually a suspect, but according to the police, they don't believe that he had anything to do with the murder. They did their own little investigation on him, and they came to that conclusion. Another angle that the defense was really pressing on was the fact that they'd never found the murder site. They turned Melanie's house inside out, upside down, and they never found one drop of evidence that the murder occurred in the home. I mean, shooting and dismembering someone, one, takes a lot of time, effort, and is incredibly messy. The only thing really in that field that they found was what they called human sawdust, a small piece of Bill's tissue that they found in the car. On April 23rd, 2007, Melanie McGuire was found guilty of first-degree murder. She was also convicted of lesser charges like perjury, desecration of human remains, and possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose. And it's safe to say that she won't be experiencing a breath of freedom for the rest of her life. Not from a lack of trying though, because she was trying to sell the narrative that maybe he pissed off the wrong people with his gambling habits, owed the wrong people some money and couldn't pay back, and that's how he lost his life. But the court decided that that story was just too overused. And with that amount of circumstantial evidence against her, it wasn't likely that they were going to fall for that story. So, do you think that Melanie is actually spending time behind bars for the crime that she actually committed? Or is she innocent? And if you think she is innocent, what do you think happened to Bill? And if you believe that she is guilty, where do you think she could have dismembered his body? Because chances are it probably wasn't in the house. Thanks for sticking around to the end of another episode. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, don't murder people. Thank you.